When she suddenly becomes distant, most men panic. They assume something is wrong with them or they rush to close the gap before it widens. But the truth is far more complex and far more revealing. A woman does not pull away without a reason, even if that reason is one she cannot articulate. Her silence, her reduced effort, her shift in energy, these are signals, not punishments. And the first key to understanding these shifts is recognizing that her distance is often a reflection of her internal world, not a judgment of your worth. When emotions become overwhelming, when expectations rise, or when she feels uncertain about her own feelings, she instinctively steps back to evaluate the situation. That distance is her way of gaining clarity, not her way of ending the connection. But for many men, this moment becomes a test they fail without even realizing it. Instead of giving her space, they begin interrogating the situation in their minds, replaying conversations, and trying to identify what they did wrong. The anxiety that follows often morphs into impulsive reactions, long messages, emotional pleas, unnecessary apologies, or attempts to fix problems that never existed. This emotional chasing does the opposite of what they intend. The more they push, the more she retreats, the more they try to explain themselves, the more she feels overwhelmed. In trying to solve a problem, they unknowingly create one. A woman's sudden distance can also arise when she perceives the dynamic shifting too quickly, when she feels she is losing control of her emotions or becoming too invested too soon. This fear, subtle but powerful, can trigger protective withdrawal. It is not that she lost interest, but rather that she temporarily lost balance. Instead of leaning in, she pauses. Instead of expressing her vulnerability, she hides it. And in that pause, she observes you. She watches how you handle uncertainty, how you respond to silence, and how you manage yourself when the attention is no longer constant. She is not looking for weaknesses, she is looking for your relationship with yourself. This is where a man's true composure is tested, not in moments of affection, but in moments of ambiguity. Most men only feel confident when a woman is warm, consistent, and expressive. But true masculine stability reveals itself when she is not, when she pulls away and you remain still, when her energy shifts and yours doesn't collapse, when she becomes unsure and you stay grounded. This quiet confidence communicates more than words ever could. It shows her you are not dependent on her reassurance, that your value does not fluctuate with her mood, and that your emotional foundation is not fragile. Her distance becomes meaningful when you stop resisting it. Instead of chasing, you accept it. Instead of reacting, you observe. Instead of assuming the worst, you stay connected to your purpose and your self respect. When you allow her space without fear, she experiences something rare: freedom without pressure, distance without punishment, and silence without conflict. And in that environment, her clarity grows, her emotions settle, her curiosity returns. The space she created becomes the same space that pulls her back toward you. Ending line: sometimes understanding her distance is the first step in allowing her to come closer than ever before. When a woman becomes distant, most men immediately assume it is their responsibility to fill the silence, to chase, to check in, to fix whatever they believe is falling apart. But in reality, her distance is often an emotional test, not a conscious one, but a natural reaction shaped by her experiences, fears, and expectations. It is during this period that she quietly observes your behavior more intensely than ever before. She pays attention to your composure, your self control, and your ability to manage uncertainty. She notices whether you spiral into neediness or remain grounded in your identity. And this observation is not about manipulation, it is about safety. She wants to know whether you are the kind of man who can remain steady when things are not perfect. This is why your reaction holds so much power. Many men crumble at the first sign of emotional distance. They over explain, over text, or overcompensate because they fear losing her. What they don't realize is that this energy signals something very different to her. To her, it feels like pressure, like emotional dependency, like a man who needs validation more than he needs self respect. And nothing repels feminine energy faster than a man who collapses under emotional tension. When you chase her out of fear, you unintentionally show her that your sense of worth depends on her presence. That realization pushes her further, not closer. But when you remain calm, when you stay present in your own life, hold your boundaries, and respect her need for breathing room, she sees something rare. She sees a man who does not panic in silence, who does not break under uncertainty, and who does not bend his identity to maintain temporary harmony. Your silence shows strength, not indifference. It demonstrates that you value connection, but not at the expense of your self respect. You reveal that you can handle emotional turbulence without losing your balance, and this stability is incredibly attractive to her. It reassures her that if she lets her guard down, she will not lose herself in the process. This is why your behavior during her withdrawal matters more than your behavior when everything is smooth. Any man can be confident when a woman is loving and present, but only a disciplined man stays grounded when she is confused, emotional, or distant. When you maintain your center, you reflect the very energy she is subconsciously searching for, strength without aggression, confidence without arrogance, patience without passivity. And often, this is what pulls her back, not your words, not your pursuit, not your attempts to fix things, but your calm. The irony is powerful. The more you try to prove your value, the less she sees it. But the more silent confidence you carry, the more she feels drawn toward you again, because your steadiness becomes her clarity, your patience becomes her comfort, your absence of pressure becomes the space where her feelings resurface naturally. Ending line: in the quiet moments, your calm becomes the loudest message you could ever send. When she pulls away, most men panic because they assume distance is the beginning of the end. But what they fail to realize is that distance is often the space where truth reveals itself, not through confrontation, not through endless conversations, but through observation. People show you who they are when you're no longer standing right next to them. And when she steps back, she is unconsciously giving you and herself the opportunity to see the relationship without the haze of constant interaction. Her silence becomes a mirror. It shows whether your connection was built on genuine compatibility or simply on emotional momentum. It shows whether her interest was rooted in depth or convenience. And most importantly, it shows what remains when attention and effort are no longer automatic. For many men, this moment feels like rejection, but in reality, it's often clarity in disguise. When she becomes distant, she is evaluating the emotional environment the two of you have created. She doesn't always do this intentionally. Sometimes her heart pulls away before her mind understands why. But during that distance, she begins noticing things she might have overlooked before. She pays attention to the way your presence affects her well being, whether she feels safe or overwhelmed, whether she feels understood or unheard. Distance sharpens her perspective. It allows her to see the nuances of your energy, the consistency of your behavior, and the depth of your character without the distractions of constant communication. And it's in this phase that the truth becomes undeniable. If she was only attached because of routine, it will show. If she truly cared but was emotionally exhausted, that too will become clear. If she pulled away because she needed room to sort out her feelings, the way you respond will influence whether those feelings strengthen or fade. Her distance becomes a filter that removes illusions and leaves only what is real. This is why it's crucial not to chase, not a pressure not to force your presence into her space, because any attempt to overstep her distance only clouds the clarity she is trying to find. It turns what could have been reflection into resistance. But when you stay centered, when you give her the time she needs, when you remain calm and grounded in your own purpose, you allow the truth to emerge without interference. She sees you not as a desperate man trying to hold on, but as a stable man who respects both her emotions and his own boundaries. That steadiness gives her something to measure her feelings against. If the connection was meaningful, she will gravitate back toward your energy. If it wasn't, her silence will grow longer, revealing a truth that would have eventually surfaced anyway. Distance doesn't destroy what is real, it only exposes it. And in that exposure, both of you gain the clarity needed to move forward with honesty rather than confusion. Ending line: sometimes the space between you is the only place where the truth can finally breathe. When she suddenly becomes distant, most men immediately assume the problem is them, but one of the deepest truths behind her behavior is this: she is testing the emotional environment, not through manipulation, but through instinct. Women don't always test you with words or arguments. Sometimes their greatest test is silence, not because they want to trap you, but because they want to understand something essential. How do you handle uncertainty? How do you behave when you're not in control? How do you act when your ego isn't being fed? Her distance becomes a quiet examination of your emotional stability. When she steps back, she is watching not for perfection, but for patterns. She wants to see whether you crumble under pressure or remain anchored, whether you chase in fear or respond in strength, whether you react impulsively or choose your actions intentionally. Because how you behave when someone pulls away says more about your character than anything you could say when everything is going well. A man who panics, begs, or tries to force closeness reveals that his sense of security depended entirely on her attention. But a man who stays calm, grounded, and respectful of her space shows that he is not driven by desperation. He is driven by inner stability. She notices the small details you don't realize you're showing. She sees whether you start over texting, over explaining, or seeking validation because you're afraid of losing her. She notices if you try to guilt her or emotionally corner her into responding, and she notices if you try to perform confidence instead of truly embodying it. But she also notices when you don't shift your entire emotional world because someone took a step back. That quiet steadiness is what separates a man who is emotionally dependent from a man who is emotionally mature. This doesn't mean acting cold or pretending you don't care. It means showing that your life has rhythm and direction independent of her approval. It means demonstrating that you trust the bond enough not to suffocate it. It means proving through action, not words, that you understand one of the greatest truths of connection. When you hold too tightly, people run. But when you hold with openness, they return if the connection is real. That calm restraint is powerful because it communicates a message she can feel without you having to say a thing. I care about you, but I'm not afraid of losing myself. And in that emotional environment, she can evaluate her own feelings more honestly. She can sense whether the distance is helping her regain clarity or revealing that something deeper was breaking long before she pulled away. Your reaction becomes part of the truth she discovers. A man who meets distance with panic pushes her further. A man who meets it with composure gives her space to come closer on her own. Ending line. Sometimes the test isn't about her pulling away, it's about whether you can remain yourself when she does. When she pulls away and the distance stretches longer than you expected, one of the most critical lessons is understanding the power of restraint and timing. Many men make the mistake of reacting immediately, sending messages, calling repeatedly, or trying to fix the situation by over communicating. But this is exactly what she doesn't want. Her silence or distance is not always a reflection of disinterest. Often it is a mirror showing how you handle the space she creates. It tests your patience, emotional intelligence, and ability to remain grounded even when uncertainty is pressing. Responding impulsively only feeds into a cycle of tension, whereas waiting, observing, and maintaining your composure demonstrates maturity and self control. Her distance challenges the assumption that attention must always be constant. It's a reminder that true attraction is built not on clinging, but on presence and independence. By giving her space, you allow her the mental and emotional breathing room to process her own feelings. She begins to recognize that you are not defined solely by her attention. This realization can trigger reflection on her part. As she notices the strength and consistency in you that she may have taken for granted, the quieter you remain while maintaining your integrity, the more she begins to internalize your value, not through words, but through your actions and composure. One key factor is that silence is powerful because it communicates confidence without effort. When you resist the urge to fill the void with over texting or anxious gestures, you create an atmosphere where she becomes aware of her own emotions. Your calmness forces her to confront her feelings. Does she miss you? Does she want your presence? Or was her distance a way to test whether you would overact? In this way, your restraint becomes a subtle magnet, drawing her closer without manipulation. It's an unspoken lesson in respect for her, for the relationship, and for yourself. Patience in this period also demonstrates emotional independence. She observes not just your words or gestures, but your ability to continue your life, pursue your goals, and remain balanced while she is distant. This is far more attractive than any attempt to force her hand or seek reassurance. When a man shows that his value isn't contingent on constant affirmation, he elevates himself in her perception. He becomes someone whose presence she chooses rather than someone she feels obligated to respond to. It is important to note that the length of silence is not a test of stubbornness, but a character. The longer you can remain centered, the more compelling your presence becomes. She begins to realize that you are not simply available on demand, but that your connection is meaningful and selective. This selective presence, grounded in self, respect, and inner calm, becomes the reason she reconsiders her own behavior and feelings. Your patience communicates that your worth is inherent, not dependent on external validation. Ending line: true attraction is revealed not by the words you speak, but by the calm and steady presence you maintain when she chooses distance. The final and perhaps most crucial aspect of handling her distance is understanding that your actions, or in this case, your deliberate inaction, speak louder than any words could. Key 6 is about the mastery of subtle influence through presence, consistency, and self discipline. When she doesn't reach out, when she steps back, or when she seems emotionally unavailable, it can trigger insecurity or frustration. Most men respond with attempts to fill the gap, to seek reassurance, or to regain control. But the truth is that the ultimate power lies in restraint. By continuing to live your life fully, pursuing your goals, and maintaining your confidence, you create a magnetic pull that she cannot ignore. She begins to notice not just the void your absence creates, but the composure and purpose that fill your life in ways that words cannot convey. Your calm, measured behavior communicates volumes. Silence here is not passive, it is an active demonstration of your inner strength. When you don't chase her, when you resist the urge to demand attention, you show that your worth is self contained. This absence of neediness is profoundly attractive because it contrasts sharply with the common experience of frantic pursuit. She begins to see you as someone who is steady, secure, and unshakable, someone whose attention is earned rather than assumed. The allure of such a man is subtle but undeniable. It's not manufactured charm, it's authenticity and consistency. Another element of this point is that distance naturally triggers reflection. By stepping back, you allow her the mental space to evaluate her own emotions, her priorities, and the value of your connection. She may have taken your presence for granted before, but when it is not immediately available, she is confronted with the reality of what she stands to lose. This is not about manipulation, it is about demonstrating that your life is full and your worth is independent. Your restraint acts as a mirror, reflecting back her feelings and forcing her to reckon with them without pressure or coercion. It is equally important to focus on your own growth during this period. She notices when you are improving yourself, building your career, maintaining your health, nurturing friendships, and cultivating hobbies. This personal development amplifies your magnetic presence. It signals that you are not idle or desperate, you are a man in motion, grounded in purpose. This authenticity is irresistible because it cannot be faked. The longer you can maintain this equilibrium, the more compelling you become, not through games or manipulation, but through genuine self possession. Ultimately, Key 6 teaches that true attraction is reinforced not by chasing or pleading, but by demonstrating your value through calm, consistent, and independent action. The man who maintains his dignity, refuses to overreact, and continues to thrive despite her distance embodies an unspoken power. This is the kind of presence that draws her back, not immediately, perhaps, but inevitably, as she begins to realize that you are a constant in a world of uncertainties, someone whose attention is meaningful because it is chosen, not demanded. Ending line, your silence, grounded in self respect and purposeful living, becomes the quiet force that reawakens her recognition of your true value.